Yeah, what a year it's been for women's sport in the UK. We have a new tennis superstar and US Open champion Emma Raducanu. The Women's Super League goes from strength to strength. History was made at this summer's 100 and records were smashed at the Olympics and Paralympics.
Yes, and all that sporting success is having a big impact as data from a new survey conducted by Sky Sports and Leaders in Sport suggests public interest in women's sport has risen even during the pandemic. 21% of adults surveyed say they have increased their viewing of women's sport compared to 18 months ago. 68% of those say that it's driven by their enjoyment of recent broadcast coverage of women's sport. You remember Team Europe won a dramatic Solheim Cup last month. And how much does a new broadcast deal played in this role? Nearly a quarter of all men surveyed say they are now following women's sport more than they did before the coronavirus pandemic.
OK, let's get more reaction to this now and speak to the FA's Director of the Women's Professional Game, Kelly Simmons. Kelly, good morning to you. What's your immediate reaction to these findings, particularly coming off the back of a pandemic?
Really delighted. I think women's sport, it was sort of written off, wasn't it, during the pandemic. I was always confident that we'd laid the foundations, not just in women's sport, but in women's football and the work we've done in the Barclays Women's Super League, that we could come back strongly. What the women's sports needed is more visibility. Our partnership with Sky and the BBC, 3 live games a weekend, is delivering that visibility. We know we've got a great product, and I think this shows we have got a great product and people want to watch it, and they're watching it more and more.
Kelly, how encouraging is it that despite all of the challenges, women's sport clearly has a great resilience, not just to survive, but to actually thrive as well?
Yeah, as I said, it's not surprising because I think we've got a fantastic product, and I think the work that we've done with our partners, and particularly our partnership, with Sky and with the BBC, to get more live games out every weekend means that people now know where to watch women's football, or they're seeing more visibility of women's sport generally. Obviously the reports about women's sport, but we know that the WSL is a key indicator alongside the fantastic 100 cricket events across the summer have been really sort of key in helping drive that interest. But yeah, we've always been confident we've got a great product. It's just about working with our partners to get it out there and more people will watch it. 1.5 million people watched the opening live games in the WSL when we kicked off this season in September, and those figures have held really strongly, and we're absolutely delighted.
Yeah, great figures there. I mean, still work to be done though, isn't there? No time to rest. Less than half of the people surveyed, that's around 41%, believe women's sport should be treated the same as men's sport when it hits our screens. Now, how do we improve that figure, first of all, and how important is male allyship to the development of women's sport, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Male allyship is absolutely key, and I'm also a board member of Women in Football, and that's one of our key priorities is to get men in the industry behind helping us develop women's football and women's sport. So it's really, really critical. I think, one of the great things I think about Sky's coverage of the Women's Super League has been the quality of the production and the sentiment around those opening games in terms of the quality of the coverage, the lead into the games. For the first time really, there's been a really good lead in to live games where people are talking about the tactics, they're talking about the stars to look out for. They're helping to educate the audience, which is only going to help increase people's engagement and following of the women's game. So all really, really positive.
I'm going to throw another figure at you, Kelly. 49% of those surveyed insist that there should be parity in marketing with both male and female athletes. How close do you think we are to seeing that now?
I think it varies across the sports. But I think, if you look at all the indicators for women's sport, whether that's the audiences on television, it's social followings, it's attendances, it's interest and awareness, all of those indicators are moving really, really quickly. It very much is on a big growth trajectory, and I think that gap is closing all the time. And I think, there's no reason why over the next few years we won't see that gap almost completely close. It's on a big, big growth curve.
Just a final question, Kelly. What are the main challenges still facing women's sports, and how can broadcasters like Sky Sports help continue the rapid development it has seen in recent years?
Well, I think if I talk about women's football and the Women's Super League for a second, obviously the next big challenge for us now, having got the product out there and growing attendances and growing audiences, is ultimately to grow revenue and make it commercially sustainable. So it's obviously at the moment still reliant in part on men's football money, and that means that it's at the whim of the decision makers who may or may not decide to invest at varying levels. So the priority now has got to be to continue on this growth in terms of building our audience, building our engagement, and commercialising the game so that it can stand on its own 2 feet. And I guess women's sports vary. You can't sort of compare tennis and golf maybe to some of the women's team sports that have had to sort of battle through what's been dominated by men's team sports ultimately and football. So I guess different challenges for different sports, but for the women's game it's about continued growth and commercial sustainability.
And let's hope that growth continues. Kelly Simmons, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.